Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I am just delighted to tell you that the victory has been won. We have gotten the copyrights back from the publisher, and the Codis, the second edition, is now available. In fact, new reviews are coming in, and all are 5-star. We're delighted to share with you the most diabolical scheme ever created by Satan was to take the DNA of the Jewish people and weaponize it to be able to take us out, to keep Jesus from coming back. If you have not read the Codist, go to Amazon right now, look up the Codist under books or Kindle. We're running a special on Kindle right now, and if you go to the Igniting a Nation website and give us just a share on this and my other book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life, on February 20th, you could win a free copy of each of these books. This morning, I'm delighted to have in studio with me Bethany Meadows, author of a new book called Getting a Grip, Build a Custom Parenting Plan That Actually Works. As a former teen runaway, Bethany did not have an easy or typical start. However, those early experiences as a rebellious teen brought her valuable insights when she adopted a sibling group of 4 children from the foster care system. Her story includes many challenges and personal struggles, including an alcoholic spouse, divorce, single motherhood, and even the loss of her home to a fire in 2015. She credits her ability to process past loss and overcome trials to an unwavering faith in a loving God. As a response to bullying, Bethany began homeschooling her biological child in 2001. She continued to homeschool post-adoption with all 5 children until the youngest graduated from high school. She's now in her 3rd year of homeschooling her stepdaughter in a collaborative effort with her mother. In an unusual arrangement, but one made successful through strong communication and mutual respect. Bethany began her own marketing firm in 2008 to allow her the flexibility she needed to homeschool and care for her children as a single mother. The agency is aptly named after her motto to stay vertical in her faith. Over the past 9 years, Vertical Solutions Media has grown from a one-woman marketing firm to a full-service marketing agency with a team of 6 marketing professionals. When she's not working, Bethany and her husband of 5 years, Jeff, love to travel together from Canada to the Grand Canyon, taking in the sights and hiking nature's bounty. In their spare time, they buy rundown homes in their community and renovate them for resale. No matter how busy, Sunday evenings are always set aside for their big blended family to come together for a meal, love, and lots of laughter. Bethany Meadows, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You have quite a story, and the story began as a runaway teen.
Yes. When I was in my early teens, I kind of struggled with anger. That kind of led into that rebellious. When I was 16, I left home and spent some time on the street. And I go back there. I want to share about that time because for a long time I didn't talk about that. The reason why I think it's important now is because I feel like God can be glorified in what He has done with such brokenness and such a rocky start, as it were.
You know, it's interesting because Paul says, not that I've accomplished all this, but this I do, forgetting what's behind, I press on to the mark of the high calling in Messiah Jesus, Messiah Yeshua. But even in that, he's not telling us to forget, because that's a part of our testimony.
Right.
We are overcomers by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb. And so part of your testimony is that birthed out of runaway, you had obviously not a healthy parental relationship.
Yes, there was a lot of conflict between my dad and myself. And it was many years before God was able to reconcile that. And as I got into my adult years, we repaired that relationship and had a good relationship. He passed about 1.5 years ago. So
Sorry to hear that, but you were able to make your peace with him.
Yes.
And was he a believer?
He was.
Okay,
Yes.
so you know where he is and you find comfort in that.
Yes.
Now, Bethany, growing up in was it a faith-based home?
It was. We even went to a Christian school, which was more unusual, I guess, back when I was growing up than it is now, because there's more opportunities for that. You know, I had a lot of conflict between the church we went to and the school I went to. They were both Christian, but they taught different things. You know, one was a little bit more legalistic, more fundamentalist, and the other one was less so. And so there's a lot of confusion for me growing up about my faith. And some things happened that hurt, I guess, my view of Christians, and as an extension of that, my view of God. And that's where I kind of went away from what I was raised in.
So, looking at this setup, you had mixed messages. You had mixed messaging at home, mixed messaging at school, and mixed messaging at church.
Right.
3 different approaches to the same core function in faith in Jesus and the inerrant Word of God.
Right. I mean, it was, you know, one was a little bit more works-based, you know, on the legalistic side. I think that's the thing that really I struggled with the most. There wasn't a lot of grace in it. So I felt, you know, because there wasn't grace in it, I felt like I didn't measure up. I didn't feel like I was good enough for this Christian walk. And so I went a different path. And it wasn't a good choice, obviously. It led me down a pretty rocky road. You know, but the Bible says that if you train up a child in the way they should go, when they're old, they will not depart from it. And so in my mid-20s, I got married at 19. I finished high school on my own, basically. And in my mid-20s is when I really started to amend my relationship with God. My spouse was an alcoholic. I started going to Al-Anon, and that did a lot to repair that in me, to heal that. And I would sneak in, you know, the back of the church after the service had already started, and sit down in the back row, and then I'd leave before the service was over because I thought if anybody got to know me, I thought if anybody knew, they would think I didn't belong there. So it was a while before, you know, I was able to get to that place in my spiritual walk where I felt secure in my relationship with God.
Now, the biological child that you have, was this with your first husband?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're now a teenage mother.
Right.
With your foundation for parenting being volatile, your vision of home being no vision at all, your identity in Christ conflicted.
Right.
And now you're in a marriage, and was the man you were married to, was he a believer? He
was not. He did make a profession of faith at one point later on, and we were married 17 years. So at one point he did, and we actually worked in youth ministry together for a period of time. But ultimately he went back to drinking, and in the course of doing that ended up meeting someone and having an affair. So 2 years after the adoption was final, he left. That kind of rocked my world, you know.
Yeah, let me stop you right there. Okay, you now have a child, a teenage child.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's 27 right now.
Right, but I mean, at the time, we're going to go back to, you're married at 19,
mm-hmm.
you have a child with this man, you're married to him for 17 years.
Right.
Okay, your child, when he left, how old was she?
She was 15, almost 16.
15, almost 16. And you adopted, or you foster cared 4 siblings.
Yes.
Okay, and at that time they were, what, 9, 10, 11, 12?
They were 8, 9, 10, 11 when we got them.
Okay.
And then they were 15, 14, 13, 12 when he left.
And then right after that, right after the adoption was final, so you went through and it was a 2-year period of fostering these 4 siblings,
Right.
along with raising your own biological child. You're now in the grips of divorce.
Right. It hit me like a freight train. I didn't really see it coming. 17 years of marriage and being so young when I got married. He was 9 years older than me. I didn't really know anything else. That was my life. That was my entire adult life. And suddenly that was very, very much changed. I had 5 kids who were depending on me. I was homeschooling them. I had 2 years prior to this I had sold a business that I was running so that I could focus on the kids 100%. So it kind of threw me where I needed to get back into making an income, making a living. 5 kids who were going through a lot of their own grief about the situation because they had already come from such loss, the adopted kids. And this was another abandonment for them. So, they really struggled with it. And of course, my biological daughter was devastated. So I was in the midst at that time of trying to deal with my own feelings, the feelings of my 5 children, and then figuring out what our future looks like. In the midst of that, what was really impressed in my heart was staying vertical. Stay vertical was on my screensaver, on my computer, it was on the phone, I wrote it on my mirror. It was just a reminder to me where my strength came from, because in that moment I didn't have any of my own. And when I did start the agency, that's why the agency is called Vertical Solutions Media, that's where that comes from. So that company became God's answer, God's blessing, God's provision for our family. There were times when I didn't know how I was going to pay the mortgage, and I would just pray about it, and 3 days later a check would arrive that I wasn't expecting that covered the mortgage. Just that happened over and over. New clients would come in at just the right time to take care of a need that we had as a family. So it's really, I call it God's company. And so it'll be 10 years in June, and for the last 10 years, God has really used that company in so many different ways, not just as a provision for me as a single mom, but also for each employee that comes to work for me. I feel that they are sent to me, and that's an opportunity for me to pour into them as well.
During this period of time as you're raising your family, are you raising them in church?
Yes.
So husband, wife, 4 foster, 1 biological, family of 7, regularly attending church, participating.
Yes.
And along comes this stunning betrayal.
Right.
Now, in order to foster, you have to be, in Alabama, you have to be licensed or approved by the state to be able to provide foster care. Is that correct?
That's right. You have to go through a training and certification process.
And that requires husband and wife to be in agreement through this process, and the home has to be certified as a suitable home for foster care. The parents have to be certified for being suitable for foster care.
Right. And we hadn't set out to be foster parents. We went through that process with the intent to adopt. It is the same process for an adoptive family, but because we had gone through that process, we were able to get them sooner than the adoption being final. So that's why they were foster kids for 2 years. But they called us mom and dad right from the beginning, and we were family, so we didn't think of it that way.
What part of you, in that orphan spirit, that I'm not good enough, I don't measure up, 16-year-old runaway girl, what was this process? How is this playing out from a spiritual perspective in healing and filling a gap, a wound that existed from what you did not have? And wanting to give to someone the opportunity that you felt you were not given.
Right. I didn't feel like I didn't blame my parents. I guess is what they're good people. They're good Christian people. I blamed myself. I was harder on myself than I was anybody. And so part of that healing process was learning how to forgive myself. I think sometimes it's easier to forgive others, right? Someone does something, that we're offended by, we forgive them. We find that a little easier, but ourselves, we can kind of be hard on ourselves sometimes. So for me, the healing really came from forgiving myself for the mistakes that I made in the past and being open and available. If God, if you want to use me, I'm here. And that's really what that was about. I had gotten involved in serving in a youth group as a youth leader, and just had a heart for the teenagers, and mostly because of where I came from. The first time I gave my testimony and shared about, spending some time on the street and in my rebellious years, I was expecting 20 kids to be there. And I got there that night. It was a Wednesday night, and normally we had about 20 kids. And there was over 100 kids. And they were like standing room only and along the walls. I'm outside with a paper bag, hyperventilating because I wasn't expecting that. But as I told my story, I could see the kids it was affecting. Tears, and I could tell from the look on their face that they were relating. And two of them came up to me after and told me that they're currently on the street, and they were walking by the church and just kind of wandered in there to see what was happening because there was all these teenagers around. So I think that it's not me. It's never me. God uses whatever we're willing to give him.
This personal experience you went through, and then coming to the realization that it's harder for us to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive others. In the process of salvation, we're forgiven first. And would you think that if God, through Jesus and the shed blood of the Messiah, have forgiven us, and we withhold forgiveness from ourselves, do we not leave him on the cross? Do we not put ourselves above his forgiveness? God says, I forgive you.
Right.
But you can't forgive yourself. Does that not put you at odds?
Right. There's a little bit of arrogance to that, right? It's
pride.
Right.
Actually, the highest form of pride.
Mm-hmm.
Something that none of us would want to admit to, but if I can't forgive myself and God has already forgiven me, am I not putting myself above
right.
God?
I think I relate this to that because the experience that you mentioned about my house burning down, that was about 3 years ago, this month actually. And the thing is that your house burning down is pretty devastating. You lose everything. You're kind of starting over. That part didn't really bother me so much. The thing that I really struggled with was letting people help me. And there's a humbling experience to realize that you're just in that place where you need help because you spend your life going, well, I'm strong and I help others, and thinking of yourself that way, and suddenly you're in that place where you have to back it on up and realize this is really humbling for me to accept donations, accept people helping. So that even out of that, even out of the fire, our family learned so much. So God taught us so much in that, and really gave us. It increases your heart for helping others, but also helps you understand how they're feeling, because you don't think of it until you've been put in that place of having nothing.
It's so interesting. If you survey 100 people and you ask how many of you are givers, love to give. Okay,
right.
How many of you are receivers? Every hand stays down.
Right.
Right? They rest on that. It's more blessed to give than receive. And I asked the question, so tell me, what did you do to receive your salvation. Well, what do you mean? You had to have received.
Right. You have to humble yourself in order to receive.
Right. And
yes.
You cannot receive with closed hands. You see, when I give you a gift, right, my hands are wrapped around the gift. Okay? I can't receive anything because my hands are full. So I have to be emptied out, and my hands have to be free to receive. And God will allow, I'm not saying God caused the fire or the hardship with your father.
We're blaming squirrels, actually.
What's that?
We're blaming the squirrels.
The squirrels, they chew through the wires?
Set a nest in the fireplace, yeah.
And then you lit a fire?
And up it went.
Wow.
Yeah.
The squirrels.
And it happened so fast. You're just sitting there one Sunday afternoon, and it was kind of a cold and drizzly day, and next thing you know, you're standing on the street and you're just watching your house burn, and you're like, what's happening right now? But, you know, I consider that a blessing, and there's a lot of blessing that came out of that as well.
So we want to make sure that we're not going on record with the people for the ethical treatment of animals that squirrels, all squirrels are arsonists.
These ones were.
We want to make sure that
You're going to get an email.
Yeah, we'll clear the air. This is not an attack on squirrels. So there are a lot of squirrel lovers.
Well, just to let you know that my kids have a real great sense of humor. The following Christmas, so this happened in February, and that Christmas, one of their gifts to me was a squirrel Christmas ornament. So,
there you go. There you go. Right. We're talking with Bethany Meadows, author of a book entitled Get a Grip, Build a Custom Parenting Plan That Actually Works. Bethany's story is a story like so many we hear on Revealing the Truth, that out of the ashes rises up a new life, a life that's not covered in ashes, but a life that's been washed clean, a life that's been washed through the shed blood of Messiah, a new beginning, a new heart, a new spirit, renewing a right spirit within her. And through fire, through difficulty in childhood, through running away, through living on the street, to getting married, to getting divorced, to adopting, and right after adopting, going through another terrible situation, the loss of a home to a fire, and yet she is telling you to get a grip. Get a grip on your situation. Get a grip on parenting. There's a way that you can have a plan. And in her case, she had 4 children from foster care. She had a biological child, and she's now co-homeschooling and helping to raise a stepchild. And all this because she's created a plan that she wants to share with you in her book called Getting a Grip. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into the concept of getting a grip from somebody who had to keep a grip, or she would have lost it, but she held on tight to the hand of the one who gave his life for her. You too can have that same strength, that same remaining vertical, by holding on to that same hand. We'll tell you more when we come back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Bethany Meadows, author of Getting a Grip, Building a Custom Parenting Plan that Actually Works. Bethany, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
While we were on break, Bethany made it very clear to me, and I've already read through the book, and she put it in a framework of understanding that made it that much more motivating to me to share the book with you. You would not plan a trip from Birmingham to California without a roadmap. You would, whether or not you use Waze or MapQuest or Google or whatever it is you use, you're going to plot your trip out because you have a destination in mind and you have stopping points along the way. You also have indicators as to whether or not you're on course, you have enough gas, you have enough air in your tires, You have all kinds of signals along the way, and you would not ignore those signals. But if you were never told what a gas gauge was, what a pressure gauge was, what a mile marker was, or looking at directions, northeast, south, or west, without some of those fundamental principles in place, you would be lost from the get-go. This book, Getting a Grip, Building a Custom Parenting Plan That Actually Works, in Bethany's own words, is not telling you how to raise your children, but helping you create a framework in which you can successfully raise your children. Is that a summary?
Yes, that's a great summary. I had a friend earlier last year who found out that her son had diabetes. So she started doing research. She started coming up with recipes that would make sense. She came up with a plan, essentially. And you know, the same thing, how much more important is it to have that bigger picture plan? If our children were sick, we would have a plan for taking care of them. But our children need us, and they're our responsibility. They're not the government's, they're not the Sunday school teachers or the school teachers. They're our responsibility, not even the church. God will have us answer for how we raised our children. They are His gift to us, His blessing to us, and they're in our care.
You know, Bethany, when I look at raising children, I've come to a new understanding that I'm not raising a child. I'm raising somebody's mother. I'm raising somebody's father. Mm-hmm. I'm raising somebody's husband. I'm raising somebody's wife. And I'm giving a period of time. Yesterday we did a special interview with the author of a book called 965 Pennies, which is 1 penny for every week of the first 18 years of a child's life. And each week you take out a penny and you review what you did during that week. Well, that was a way for them to gauge good, bad, but their bad behavior could only last for 7 days because they were going to review, they were going to analyze, they were going to talk about what they set out to do, what they tried to do, what they wanted to do. So very interesting concept that this pastor had created when he dedicated a child. He gave you a mason jar with these pennies in it. And that interview is up on our YouTube site and up on WND TV, the same way your interview will be on our YouTube site and on WND TV. We get our parenting skills by what we've seen, and every
exactly right.
single person I know has made this statement: I will never. My father said to me, those words will never part my lips. My mother did this to me. I will never do that to their children. But when they were faced with that exact same circumstance, it's as if your brain there's a brain transplant, and you become your mother, you become your father. The words that come out of your mouth, because you're not intentional about it. You have not prepared for when that occurrence comes, and it will come. Right? Every child's story is basically the same. My job is to come in between you and Dad. I'm a divider, not a unifier. Okay? So my purpose, number one, is to be a wedge, to drive you apart, all right, and figure out which one I'm going to win favor with, and then I'm going to go for it because I'm going to get what I want, because this one's going to take up my cause.
We don't have to teach them to do that.
We do.
They're born with that skill.
Then
yes.
My second natural skill is I'm a boundary checker. All right? I am constantly reaching out to see where the boundary is. And if my hands don't hit the boundary, I'm going to take a step to the left to see if I hit the boundary. I'm going to take a step to the right. And I'm naturally inclined to be a divider, okay, and a boundary pusher.
Right. Did you ever see the movie Jurassic Park?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so you know when they're standing there at the raptors enclosure, and they kept hearing this noise, and they said, what are they doing? And they said they're throwing themselves into the electrified fence to find the weak spot. And that's what you're talking about with boundaries. You know, our kids are like little raptors just throwing themselves at the boundary fence to see where's the weak spot, where can I get through.
And it's so true. And you know, I hear these stories, my child was perfect. Okay? You know, I have the most wonderful child in the world, adopted her at birth. She's 28 now. I'm so incredibly proud of her. But I'm the guy that when they said she needs to have her hair put in a bun, I'm the guy with the rubber band and the hot dog bun. Okay, and I'm putting her hair in the bun and I'm wrapping it up and I'm saying, okay, baby, your hair's in a bun, you know, go off to school. I'm pretty literal that way. I raised her without a plan. I was a single dad for 7 years. I was responding, reacting, panicking, trying everything, reading books.
Right. I think most people are raising their kids based on, as you said, their experiences of how they were raised. That's kind of their compass that's been built into them. The very first chapter of the book is called Getting Your Head Right. And the reason for that is we don't all come from perfection. There's no such thing as a perfect set of parents, which means that we've picked up some things that could be mild or it could be severe. It could be, if you had a history of abuse or neglect, like my kids did, then you have things that are cracked. You have things that are broken. And if you don't address those, you're going to pass some of that off to your kids as you're raising them. So that's why the first chapter is all about getting your head right. Then we go into choosing who you're going to serve. And that's really being intentional about what your spiritual goals look like as a family, what your values are, what are you going to cherish, how are you going to raise your kids, what are you going to teach them about God and their identity in Christ and why that's so important. And then I take it, the journey kind of goes into establishing parenting objectives. What do you want your kids to look like as adults? Do you want them to have a servant's heart? Do you want them to have a strong work ethic? Identifying what those look like are so important because then you can filter things through that. You can say, well, does my checkbook and my calendar reflect what I say my objectives are? Then we go into actually putting that into action with a discipline system that not only provides a consequence, but it provides a teaching opportunity at the exact same time for the things that you said were important to your family. So that's what getting a grip is in a nutshell.
During the break, you told me that you had like a trigger word, a key word.
Right, a warning phrase.
A warning phrase. And I thought that was so insightful. We serve a God of second chances.
Yes, we do.
And if right when we were making a bad decision, we could hear from heaven, would you like to review, would you like to rethink maybe some of the decisions we would have made, we might not have made?
Right. Well, and that's why it's so important to, listen to the Holy Spirit, because I think He does give us the warning phrase. If we start going down, make a decision or go down a wrong path, I think we get a check in our spirit if we're listening for that, if we're open to that. With my kids, I use, would you like to rephrase or would you like to rethink that? And I did it consistently so they always knew. But what was important about that warning phrase was I transferred the power from me forcing them to do what I wanted under whatever it took, to giving them, empowering them to the choice of, will I rephrase it or will I accept the consequence of not rephrasing it? Because a lot of our struggles, at least initially, was geared around respect. So there was a lot of talking back or body, eye rolling and that kind of thing.
Nothing you experienced when you were 16, 15, 14.
I was the queen.
You were the queen.
Yes, I was the queen of the eye roll and the throwing the hip out and the loud sigh and all of that. But I wanted to teach them respect because that to me was a core principle. They needed to respect themselves. They needed to respect each other. They needed to respect authority. I think that's key when you go out into the world. If you don't have respect, things can get wonky in a hurry. So that was important. And so I would put things into the ticket system. Into the tickets were slips of paper that I had worked up on in a Word document, and some of them were scripture verses that supported those objectives. And then initially, maybe they wrote them out 5 times, and as they got older, they wrote them out more and more times, up to 20 times, and then they had to memorize it and share what it meant. And so those things were in there over and over years. So it just continued to imprint on them during their childhood what those parenting objectives were about that hard work, about stewardship, personal responsibility, all those things. Those were mine. And of course, in the book, it takes you on to determine what yours should look like. Other things in there were like chores, serving other, one of them might have been make your siblings' bed for them. So that kind of supported that serving others, serving your family concept that I wanted them to get. So the things that you put on the tickets are things that can support your objectives.
In today's ever-changing parenting world, we find that grandparents are playing a much more active role in the upbringing of especially 1, 2, 3, even 4-year-olds that aren't in the preschool system, or maybe are in the preschool system, but then are picked up by the grandparent and spend time with the grandparent till mom or dad can come home from work. Is this the kind of book that a grandparent would benefit from in being able to kind of reset that parenting model that they had established so many years ago? In my case, would have been the 50s.
Right.
How to modernize it, how to bring it up to date without having to go out and get the new manual.
Well, I think anybody who's caring for kids would benefit from the book. The reason is the system that's in play actually removes the emotion from the situation. So if you're caring for kids, you need to keep your cool. You need to model that you're in control of your emotions and so forth. So this system does that. It takes the emotion out of it. So that was the thing for me. If you ever argued with an 8-year-old, you're never winning that argument because there's no logic on their side. So you're trying to argue without any logic being in play, and it'll make you crazy. And if you multiply it by the number of kids you have during a day, you're spending a lot of time going around and around with a child. It removes that. It takes it out of the equation, and so it saved my sanity, literally, because they could work me.
Right. So now your kids are older. You have grandchildren?
I have one. Yes.
You've got one grandchild.
She's about to turn 3. So.
Okay. What is it you're seeing in her mother, or is it her father? Which one was your child?
Mother.
And her mother, that has become a reinforcement that the system that you used in raising her has now become a good model.
Right.
Instead of saying, I don't ever want to be like my mother, I don't ever want to be like my father. When I have children of my own, I want to be like, and I want to use the tools that were used with me. Are you seeing any of that reflected in her?
Yes. She has very strong boundaries with my granddaughter, but she's very, I don't think the right word is, she's very laid back. She's very relaxed. She's very much in control of her emotions. And a lot of that comes from just having that system in play, because I grew up with, a dad who would raise his voice a lot, and so I have similar personality traits to him, and so I had that, and working through this process and system that I set up for my kids actually helped me deal with that thing in me that I didn't like about raising my voice. The kids used to say it would make them annoyed that I could stand there and be so calm when they were feeling so upset. But it was a way of modeling for them how to control your emotion in the moment. And so she definitely does that.
Right. We tend to assume that mothers read books about parenting. that fathers just take their leads from the moms, but that's not really the case.
No, not always the case. I do think parenting takes two, and you need to be on the same page. You remember we talked about earlier, kids will figure out which parent they can get away with what. Having a system in play and working the system actually makes it easier for the family. It creates more peace and more unity and more time. You spend less time trying to force your kids to do what you want, and you can spend the time actually enjoying them. I love my kids. I love spending time with them. We still, every Sunday, we have family dinner. Kids get upset if I go somewhere, or if we have something else going on and we cancel family dinner, they get upset because they enjoy it. And it's become a tradition for us. We keep family traditions going. One of the chapters in the book, I talk about bonding, which is, I don't see that talked about a lot, because when we have a baby, right, we're very intuitive about bonding. We rock them, movement, we feed them, we look them in the eye, we coo at them, verbal expressions. Those are all bonding elements. But as our kids grow up, we're less intentional about bonding. And in the world that we're in today, that's so important, more than ever, that we commit and be intentional about really connecting with our kids so that we are their source of information. We are their source of advice when they need it. They're not going to other people because they're connected and bonded to us. And so I spend a whole chapter just talking about ways you can do that, even when your kids are teenagers, when your kids are, in school age or whatever. There's different strategies and things that you can do at that. One thing that we did that was a favorite of mine was scent, because smell is the strongest sense we have tied to memory. So I had everything in the house smelling like apple cinnamon, because that was just my favorite smell. So I had, the dish detergent was apple cinnamon, and the little, scent thing that you would put on the furnace would blow apple cinnamon out, and I'd burn apple cinnamon candles. And the impact that had was when we were somewhere and it smelled like apple cinnamon, the kids would say, "Mom, it smells like home in here." They then associated that with home. Right. So when they were home and they smelled apple cinnamon, they felt safe. They knew that they were in that place. So that was just one example. Feeding your kids, even when they're older. "Hey, I'm making the soup here. Will you taste test it for me?" And finding those excuses to hold a fork up and feed them is very bonding. Movement, very bonding. So when I hug them, I sway back and forth, even to this day, because that's also, like the way you rock a baby. It's the same idea. So
things we don't think about, but things that are very important.
Yes.
Now, is this a book that you read when you find out you got pregnant? Is this a book you read before you get married? Is this a book you read after you've got 4 toddlers running around the house? When's the right time for this book? Well,
the book is put into 10 chapters, and I'm not a fluffy writer. I'm very direct. I try and be as concise as I can. I personally don't like to read a lot of fluff to get to the meat. I just want to give me the information, especially when it's something like this, where it's a plan, it's a strategy, and you're trying to figure it out. You don't want to have to weed through all of that. So it is a very simple read, I think. There's aspects of the book that are important even before you become a parent, about getting your head right, about understanding what your spiritual goals are. Those are all important things to kind of gives you time to prepare. I think as far as I have from preschool all the way through high school, the principles of the book stand. It's very adaptable to age. You can change what the tickets look like. If they're real young, 2 and 3, I actually just have a whole section where I address some ideas on things that you can do to help prepare them for this later part of the system.
What resources? You have a website.
I do, gettingagriparenting.com.
Gettingagriparenting.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Books available on Amazon. It's available at my website. It's at some here in Birmingham. It's available at some local bookstores, and we're working on some broader distribution right now.
Okay, and the Vertical Solutions Media, what kind of marketing and media services are you offering?
We're a full-service agency, so basically our business model is to partner with business owners, and we either become a supplement to their existing marketing team or we become their marketing department for them. So we work on a monthly retainer basis. Most of our clients are very long-term. They stay with us a long time because we just become part of the team. So, and that's a model that I really enjoy. I really like being part of watching them grow and being part of that success. So,
great. Well, I can't give you any higher marks than I think that this is necessary. Even today, with our millennials, we take our parenting models from what we received. I do a lot of premarital counseling, and always talk to them about you are going to be the father, the husband that your father was to your mother, unless you intentionally approach the marriage from a different perspective and you define early on what it is you want that marriage to look like, and you correct your course along the way in order to accomplish that goal.
right.
This book is a roadmap. It gives you the opportunity to adjust along the way. There are tools. This doesn't tell you how to be a parent. This tells you how to create a framework for parenting that is going to give you the best opportunity for success in having a healthy relationship based on respect, on biblical values, and on a loving, caring opportunity to give your children the chance to make the right choices. All right? A lot of us were told, don't do what I do what I say. We've seen that model. That model doesn't work. Right? We do, what we see other people do, not what they say. Our walk with the Lord is not based on how much we talk about God, but how much we reflect God. Parenting is the exact same way. And if you want to raise successful parents, you're going to have to raise successful children. And getting a grip is exactly what you as a mom and dad need to do, is get a grip. You need to get a grip on your parenting style, on your parenting methodology, and build a custom parenting plan that actually works. How do we know it works? Because we have living proof right here of someone in the worst of conditions you could possibly have, and it worked, and it's being replicated now by an adult daughter who has her own child, and she's using the same principles. Bethany Meadows, thank you for coming to visit with us
very much.
here on Revealing the
appreciate
Truth.
it.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.